and welcome to Running a Publicly Available Developer Sandbox. I am Andrew Gracey. I work at SUSE as a developer evangelist and advocate, and for the past 9 months or so, I've been running the Cloud Application Platform Developer Sandbox. First off, basically, we've been running the sandbox as just a zero-cost hosted environment, zero cost to the users, to provide hands-on experience of the developer use cases that Cloud Foundry and our SUSE Cloud Application Platform can help with. Basically, we really want to push developers to experience what CF Push actually looks like. We also want to give a place that somebody can come in and play with what an end user would experience from our Stratos user interface. We also want to give a chance for people to play around with some of the integrated services from our marketplace, specifically Mini Broker. This is just a slide that we have for our sales decks to be able to get people to actually sign up. And basically, if you want, here's a bunch of links. Just right up front. We have, so if you want to sign up, there's the developers.suse.com /sandbox. We also did a getting started guide and a FAQ, and there is a forum. It is maybe a bit lackluster at the moment, but if you have any questions, I do routinely watch it. So today, basically in the session, I would like to talk about kind of some of the challenges that we had and some of the places that we had to kind of invent our own piece of the puzzle. To be able to basically get a publicly facing sandbox for Cloud Foundry. So basically, we set up some onboarding. We've got a getting started guide. Scaling was a bit of a challenge to learn how to do effectively. I'll go through a few of the metrics that I look at on a fairly regular basis. We're working on building out some health checks, and I'll walk through a quick retrospective as well. So first up, onboarding. So we wanted basically to be able to have a self-service setup of the account. So if somebody came in and we didn't know them before, we wanted to be able to create their account and get them up and running as fast as possible with as few clicks as possible and also as little time as possible. So the first challenge that we ran into was we needed some sort of self-service, right? The way we went about that is I built a tool. I built in Node.js because that's what I can wrap a prototype in, and I kind of built a wrapper for a few of the CF API endpoints, as well as UAA endpoints that I needed to be able to call, because what I found was that the existing library in Node wasn't really what I needed, and the Java library ended up just causing more problems than it solved for our specific use case. It seems like for a long-running process, didn't seem to work the way we would have expected. Again, that's most likely our fault. So basically, we set up a way that when you clicked a button and on our portal, it would create you a personal organization with 4 spaces: dev, test, prod, and a sample space. This way people can kind of play around with what does it look like to actually have multiple spaces. You can invite people to your organization because you are the org admin, as well as we can set quota or organizational quotas. So that obviously we don't want somebody coming in and using a free resource and then installing a Bitcoin miner and completely destroying our cluster. Nobody wants that. Except for the miner. And we also went ahead and pushed the 12-factor app into every organization in the sample space. So that way, one of the problems that we were trying to overcome with this is kind of that blank canvas, white page kind of issue where you set something up and there's nothing in there and you don't know where to go, right? So if you browse to Stratos and log in as yourself, now you have at least one app that's up and running that you can kind of click around in, as opposed to having nothing there. So that was pretty useful. There's a screenshot of kind of what it looks like. We also wrote a getting started guide. One thing that we wanted to do was a very tailored, specific to our environment, what you need to get up and going for a developer who has never used Cloud Foundry or Heroku or really potentially any cloud, right? We wanted it to be for both Stratos and the CF CLI. So we wrote 2 pages, one that kind of walks you through how do you deploy an app in Stratos that's really more geared towards potential operators. Even though this is a developer sandbox, there's enough bleed between the two camps at this point. And then one that is very much geared towards like what a day in, day out developer workflow might look like, including like using CFSSH to do a port forward to get debugging hooked up. We're also currently working on an advanced concept section. With the newest release of Mini Broker, we added RabbitMQ support, which all of a sudden opens up the potential for showing off like how do you do like a web and then a worker in 2 completely different pods, or but in 2 different applications. And then how do you work with a message bus in between? So we're still improving the advanced concepts at the moment, but hopefully we'll get one where I think the next thing that we're going to be writing is one on like how do you incorporate Cloud Foundry into a more fully featured CI/CD, for example. So scaling became kind of an issue because we have basically seen about a 10 user per week increase in users, kind of regardless of our marketing activity, which is a bit surprising. So I don't fully understand it, and we need to do a little bit of analytics to figure out where people are coming from and how people are learning about us. But it seems very linear. So we've had to scale. We started with 3 EC2 instances, each 32 gigs of RAM, and I think they're A3 or something like that. I forget exactly what the A3 extra large. I think. I don't know. I'm not gonna remember that. And we've had to scale a few times. We also upgraded from SUSE Cloud Foundry to kubectl. We did that maybe a month or 2 ago, at the time of recording, at least. And kind of there's been a few issues that we've had with scaling, and kind of the main one is this Diego split brain issue. Is that because Diego is doing a bunch of scheduling in its runner, and then Kubernetes is doing scheduling of Diego itself, it's hard to scale down, right? So if we scale up, all of a sudden, like we have too many resources, and then we kind of have to like pull the replica set, the stateful set that controls Diego. We got to pull that down. Then we got to make sure that everything gets scheduled on the right node so that we can deactivate and scale down the replica set that controls the node count. And it becomes very messy, right? Because there's, especially with the way persistent volumes are done in Amazon, you kind of have to be very intentional about like where things get placed and make sure that things get placed in order. And Diego makes this especially hard because you kind of have to scale down in order, but then you have to make sure that the right things scale down. We also found several bugs. One was there's a log aggregator has some is a resource hog and has some memory leaks. Luckily, we are in an environment where all the nodes are the same size, so at least we can set the memory limits and constraints correctly, so that if it gets too big, it just kills it and we lose all our logs and nobody cares. The other thing is we've got multiple layers of logging, right? So you've got logging done at the pod level, you've got logging done at the machine level, you've got logging done at the platform level as well, and it just kind of explodes in how much logging actually happens. And then lastly, we found a bug with all of a sudden, if you're running like we are a massive amount of small applications, you end up with hitting iNotify limits where you'll have iNotify watchers assigned to each pod because I think is it Envoy, Istio, whichever piece of that puzzle we were relying on as part of kubectf. So we ran into a few issues there. But other than that, the scaling has been pretty linear. Overall, it's not too bad. Just a couple hiccups that causes maybe a little more downtime than we would have otherwise wanted. Let's see. Next, we've got metrics. I'm going to go ahead and switch over. We'll see how this. Yeah. So here is our Kubernetes Grafana. So basically, we've got kube metrics, or kube node. I don't remember what it's actually called in the Kubernetes world. Yeah. So basically, we've got our metrics pod running with everything enabled, and then this dashboard. Probably people have seen it before. It's actually I think it's 10,000. If you do an import, it's the ID of 10,000, and it's a very useful dashboard. And I can kind of go through and make sure that each node is reasonably healthy, and that things are getting kind of load balanced as I would expect, as you see right here. I wasn't planning for this, but what is taking up a lot of... Oh yeah, because log cache is on here. This goes back to the logging issue. Log cache takes up 16 gigs of memory, which seems excessive. Yeah, that's fun. But yeah, so I can kind of go and make sure that things are scheduled on the right place, and that the Diego cells are actually being load balanced across nicely from actual resource utilization. Which is nice. And so basically I tend to come through here. You can see that every once in a while we miss the cache. Yeah, can see networking, all good things. Can see right here that we're pretty good. It tends to float around the 30s right now with how many users we have. I would prefer it closer to maybe 60 or so. Because then that gives us a little bit of room to grow, but we're not wasting money at that point. So hopefully we'll grow to the point where because I just don't want to scale back down right now. So yeah. So these metrics are super useful. And I tend to just use the Kubernetes metrics as opposed to the ones that I get from Cloud Foundry, because they give a much more holistic picture. I do have Cloud Foundry metrics that I do look at, although for data privacy reasons, I'm not going to show them because they show user names in them. So back to our presentation. If I click that, does it go right to the middle? Probably not. No, it doesn't. Yeah, so I'm also working on a health check. It is still in progress project. But basically, I'm working on actually having a health check that is external to the system, because the system itself can't necessarily report its own health all the time, right? It has to be something else that kind of from somewhere else on the internet looks and can tell if the system as a whole is healthy. So the things that we're going to be checking are, can I log into UAA, right? Can I log into the Cloud Controller API? Can I access the Getting Started guide, which is running as an application? So basically that's testing, like, does the router work? And are all the certs right? Is everything routing correctly? I put these in the wrong order, but can we SSH into the application, right? If I do a push and actually one that I didn't list here is can I push an application, right? And then can I SSH into it, and then can I tear it back down? And then lastly is the portal itself. So basically our entire developer portal, which is not running as an application because naturally, if there is downtime, I would like for the place that we're going to tell people that there's downtime not to also go down, because that's just, nobody has fun with that. This is something that I think would be really interesting to see, maybe a CF project kind of getting built out of. Some external health check would be nice. And then, lastly, a quick retrospective. So we're getting close to 500 users. I think if I remember from looking at it a couple days ago, roughly only 75 or so have a SUSE.com address. So we have probably over 400 users that are not SUSE employees, which I'm really happy about. Up front, we allowed multiple accounts per user, and the reasoning for that was we wanted people to be able to create accounts and be able to kind of set them up and then give them to other developers. Because let's be real, this is to some extent a sales tool, even if it's not really, but it's marketing and sales. So we wanted the ability for people to go, hey, this is really cool. This is a cool tool. How about you go check it out? Here's a username and password. Change your password. And I think that was a good idea, but I made a mistake in the security of that, which is actually the next one: self-inflicted security injuries. I wrote the onboarding really quickly and I even knew that there was a security hole in the middle of it because I was just exposing an API with no auth to the public, right? And honestly, it took 7 months for somebody to notice it, other than myself and our team. And the really, really annoying thing is that we had the fix sitting and staging and waiting on some last minute approvals, because we were having to change some user interface aspects. And like the day before we were going to roll it out, somebody finally noticed and hacked us in quotes, and basically realized that they could create 1,000 accounts. So they did create 1,000 accounts, and so we rolled out the fix real fast, ignored the last couple checks of people needing to see it, and just went, yeah, screw it, we'll just go ahead and roll this out and call it good. And then I put it at a scale faster, but honestly, we probably should have used smaller instances and more of them, so that we can kind of scale smaller and more frequently. Because right now we've kind of got these big chunks of scaling that we're doing as we're going. And when you're using cloud, like, you can kind of scale however you want. You're not limited to physical hardware. And so we should have thought about that maybe a little bit earlier. But honestly, it's been a good experience, very frustrating experience because I'm not ops. I'm a developer having to do ops. And so I've made a bunch of rookie mistakes in that case and learned a lot. Yeah. Thanks for listening. Hopefully this was useful. Definitely feel free to reach out and ask me questions. And also go and sign up for the sandbox. Thank you.